Journalists Roundtable is a half-hour discussion with Pennsylvania journalists about the week's top political news and current events. Journalists Roundtable is a production of PCN, a nonprofit television network. Listeners like you make our programming possible. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit PCNTV.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.
Welcome to Journalist Roundtable. I'm Phil Beckman. Today we're joined by Ashley Murray, senior reporter at State's Newsroom, Kate Huangpu, government reporter at Spotlight PA, and Tom Riese, Capitol reporter at WESA in Pittsburgh. Tom, what story stood out for you this past week?
I think mostly the backlash to the state Supreme Court ruling on skill games. We definitely saw some reactions, a lot of reactions since that June 15th ruling. We know that the state legislature has about 4 months to decide what to do, if anything, on that. So I've been following that pretty closely.
Ashley, what have you been following?
Well, here in DC, the 250th birthday of the signing of the Declaration of Independence is the big topic right now locally. Last night, President Trump kicked off his administration's iteration of the celebrations called Freedom 250. He did a speech last night, closely mirrored his campaign rally speeches, and just lots of loyal supporters turned out for that. And now there's a national mall festivities until July 10th, and things will stretch into August, including with a Grand Prix race around the mall.
Kate, what story caught your eye?
There was a flurry of data center bills that passed the House in the past few days that was really interesting. They passed the grid proposal that Governor Shapiro had, but they also passed a repeal of the sales and use tax exemption for data centers, which has been proposed by a few different people, but I just didn't expect it to pass so quickly. And now we have to see what the Senate does.
Kate, why are the data center issues so significant right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been a slowly growing issue. There's a lot of concerns about energy prices, water availability, impact on communities. And so it's sort of the culmination of mounting concern. And right now, it's budget season. There's a lot of legislation that's being thrown around. There's more opportunity for things to be passed. And so I think one of the areas of focus of this budget season has been data centers. There's usually one or two issues that pops up. And data centers seems to have captured the attention of, people on both sides of the aisle, in both chambers. There's a lot of popular concern about it. And I think all of those things have sort of created a perfect storm of, a locus of focus on this issue.
Tom, you've written about data centers, and Representative Charity Krupa has a bill that would bring about a moratorium for a period of time. What would the bill do, and why is she looking to do that?
Yeah, when we spoke a little bit earlier this month, she said, hey, I'm maybe not fully just opposed to development in general. This could be a good boon for our natural gas industry if a lot of energy needs to be used for these. But she wanted the municipalities, she's from a pretty rural district southeast of Pittsburgh. She's like, we should give them time to come up with their own zoning policies so they understand what's happening, instead of these projects coming up without the locals realizing it. And the sales tax exemption that Kate mentioned, I know has been around for about 5 years now. And I think maybe folks just weren't either paying attention to the projects that were coming through, or there was possibly less transparency around them. Now it seems like Harrisburg's kind of catching up to this sentiment that people are really worried about.
So is this an issue that falls along partisan lines, or is it crossing partisan lines?
Definitely not. I think Rep. Krupa told me that some of the most diehard conservatives in her district are sort of partnering up with liberals to oppose some of this development. And I'm unsure what other sort of coalitions or what other sort of topics would have formed that kind of coalition in recent years.
Kate, how are the gubernatorial candidates handling this during the campaign?
Yeah, they're almost kind of trying to one up each other on how fine of a line they can walk on data centers, right? Like Josh Shapiro was very pro data center. He really touted this $20 billion investment from Amazon Web Services. Then he introduced Grid, saying that we want these data centers, but it would be better if they could follow these environmental standards. We want to walk this line of maintaining investment, but protecting communities. Stacey Garrity is saying, Grid doesn't go far enough. We shouldn't be giving these sweetheart tax deals to billion-dollar corporations. I was just at her listening session yesterday in Montco about data centers. And one of the things that I thought was interesting was she was saying she doesn't support a moratorium, but she supports a pause. A moratorium is for 3 to 5 years longer, a definitive period of time, whereas she said a pause is however long it needs to be. And so they're both candidates that are trying to sort of not outright prevent data centers from coming to Pennsylvania, but play or at least acknowledge people's concerns about the impact of their communities. And so it seems they are occupying similar spaces. It's just a lot of nuances and details about what the differences are.
Is there a sense that these series of bills relating to this will be part of the budget negotiation that's due next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question. I think there's a lot of ideas floating around during budget season always. We'll see if they'll be able to loop in something like Grid or even the repeal of the sales and use tax exemption. Like Tom said, this has been around for a long time, so it kind of all happened at once in terms of actually this House actually passing this. But I think that's definitely what I'm keeping my eye on going into budget week, alongside the big, budget deal itself. For me, an area of interest is any of this stuff actually going to get included?
Ashley, I want to go back to your comment about the America 250 celebration. That there are some competing events going on here. There's also something called Freedom 250. What's the difference between the two?
Sure. So America 250 is the commission created by Congress a decade ago that has been planning for this semi-quincentennial for years. Their programming goes mostly beyond Washington, D.C. There's, national student essay, art, poetry contests that, result in winners get a paid field trip to any number of amazing places in the U.S. And then, there's also block parties on July 4th in Milwaukee and Charleston, South Carolina, and a huge concert in LA to kick off this Giving Forth initiative that the commission has set up, which is to promote mid-year giving instead of end-year giving. And there's, they're collecting volunteer hours, trying to set records. So that's the overall America 250 agenda. Now, Freedom 250 was set up by an administration task force. Trump ordered the task force just days after he began his second term. The programming it does leave DC. There are some events in the Dakotas this week where President Trump will go to the Teddy Roosevelt Library opening. There are fireworks at Mount Rushmore, but a lot of it is concentrated in DC. We have this Great American State Fair kicking off today here on the National Mall. That will include exhibits from states and territories. I believe it's supposed to include a rodeo. I know Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is there today talking to people, and it will culminate with what President Trump promises to be the largest fireworks show in history on July 4th. Although the state fair will stretch out, and then there will be a high school athletic competition in August called the Patriot Games, and then a IndyCar series race around the mall August 23rd called the Freedom 250 Grand Prix.
Well, it sounds like a pretty full schedule. Are you getting a sense that the public is paying attention to this?
Well, last night I was there for the kickoff of Freedom 250, and President Trump spoke for about 25 minutes. There was lots of pomp and circumstance. I counted 5 military flyovers. The U.S. Marine Corps band played. Many members of the cabinet spoke ahead of time during the pre-programming. There were some insults thrown about artists who canceled dropped from the Freedom 250 schedule a few weeks ago. Lots of praise for the military first responders, acknowledgement of the 25th anniversary of 9/11. And there were many people from around the country there. I spoke to people from South Dakota, Virginia, several people from California, and lots of Trump, merch, people wearing Trump merch, 45, Trump 45, fight, fight, fight t-shirts. So it was a crowd of loyal supporters.
Tom, I want to go back to what you were talking about with skill games. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court recently ruled that skill games were illegal gaming devices. And what impact is this going to have on the debate? So this has been an ongoing issue for a while, and people have had a hard time arriving at a consensus regarding taxing and regulating them. How will this Supreme Court decision impact that?
Before this ruling, I know that a lot of legislative leaders were saying, we don't really want to decide on how we want to tax the machines or tax the revenue until we hear what the state Supreme Court wants to do. And now that they've said that they're not, their predominant feature is not a skill-based element, but closer to slot machines like casinos. So now that really sort of plays into what Governor Josh Shapiro wanted for a few years now, which is to tax those closer to the slot machine rate, a little bit over 50% what casinos pay. When I talked to Senate Democratic leader Jay Costa last week, he felt pretty confident that the skill game issue could be part of this year's budget, but with that court ruling happening just midway through June, that's pretty short runway for them to complete something by the end of this month. Of course, they could go over the June 30th deadline, as often happens. So it seems like there's some consensus saying, all right, we at least know the path forward. We should decide whether it's a per machine per month fee that these machines should pay into the state coffers. There's or 50 up to 52% like Shapiro wants. There's also I believe a debate about what this money should be used for. Should it go into the general fund? Should it be used to offset maybe some public transit costs? I've even heard people say this should finally go into property tax relief for some folks, just to name a few things that are being considered as far as I can tell.
How has the industry responded? One of the key players is Pacematic. Have they responded to this decision?
Yeah, they have responded that they're pretty upset by it. And just Wednesday on the state capitol steps, I recognized a few folks from that company there, as well as a bunch of small business owners, convenience store owners, shopkeepers, part of this alliance called the PA Tavern and Players Association. The leader of that group owns a small chain of grocery stores out in Western Pennsylvania. For what I could tell, they're all calling for skill games to be taxed. They want them to be regulated, and they want there to be a difference between businesses that are already operating with skill games as a small element, maybe in the corner, instead of these what they're calling mini casinos. You may have passed one. I actually spent time at one right after the ruling, where it's a business not dedicated to anything else besides just having these terminals in them. This group of people that in the industry are calling for regulation and saying, hey, let's maybe crack down on those. Consider that a grocery store, a convenience store, a bar is different because there might just be 3 to 5 machines in there. So it's kind of getting into a bit of a nuanced discussion. If it hadn't already been, it's especially a little more prominent now.
Kate,
to Tom's
okay.
point, I will say, I think there's no agreement as to how many skills games machines there actually are in Pennsylvania. It could be from 30,000 to 70,000. And so a lot of how we tax depends on, and how much revenue we'll get, importantly, depends on how many of these machines there are. I think Governor Shapiro's plan proposed, licensing around 40,000. We don't know if that's an accurate number as to how many of the machines there are in Pennsylvania. And it's revenue that these small business owners were using. All of which is to say, Senate Republicans, I think, put out a statement saying they'd love to see skill games tax be included in the budget. who's to say if that's going to happen?
Now we know that Governor Shapiro has his plan for taxing skill games. Does Stacey Garrity, who's a GOP candidate for governor, is running against him, and the Pennsylvania State Treasurer, has she come out one way or the other on this issue?
So I believe in the past she said she supported the more of the modest tax, like a per machine per month fee. But I reached out to her campaign after the ruling, and it was sort of like, we want to support businesses. We also want the state to have money. We asked about specific percent she might support. We didn't get that answer. And when I had a discussion with my editors about it, it's like, well, this short window of time that the state has to regulate them, and potentially this budget deadline hurrying things up, it could be that the decision is made way before she really needs to roll out a whole policy prescription. It could happen. I mean, it's supposed to happen before even the November election. So I am maybe not surprised that she is sort of taking a wait and see approach, because it might be able to just bypass completely the governor's election.
Kate, you wrote recently about the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court ruling that was in April about the state's ban on using public funds such as those for Medicaid to cover abortion care violates the state's Equal Rights Amendment and equal protection provisions. What has been the response to this?
It's mixed. It really depends on who you ask. Even within the gubernatorial candidates, right? Josh Shapiro has said he long thought that this ruling, the original ruling, the Fisher ruling, was immoral. He's glad that the ban is struck down. A lot of, like Planned Parenthood of PA supported it. The Women's Law Project, who argued the case, supported it. But on the other side, Treasurer Garrity said that it was an immoral decision. We shouldn't be using state funds for abortion. The PA Pro-Life Coalition was really against it. They really wanted Attorney General Sunday to appeal the ruling, which he now has. And so definitely runs the gamut of responses, and it depends on who you ask.
Ashley, one of the key national issues, of course, has been the war with Iran. You wrote that the Republican-led U.S. Senate served up a rare public check on President Donald Trump's agenda this week when it voted to approve a House-passed war powers resolution to end hostilities in Iran. What impact would this vote have on the actual conduct of the war?
Well, the two of the senators who voted for it on, was it Monday or Tuesday? All my days are mixed up. Have since yesterday, after a very tense meeting with Trump on the Hill, backtracked and now have disapproved of an Iran war powers resolution. The weight that these kinds of resolutions hold on the actions of the president, as far as sending military troops into action without congressional authorization, is a perennial legal debate. The administration maintains that it's not constitutional, whereas Congress and the ones who voted for it especially are saying, no, Congress needed to authorize this military action, and nothing more, no more hostilities until we weigh in. But yeah, yesterday there was a very tense meeting on Capitol Hill with Trump and Senate Republicans. Senator Bill Cassidy, who lost his seat in Louisiana lost his primary after Trump endorsed an opponent, got into it with Trump reportedly about not having enough information on the Iran war. And I believe there was reportedly a briefing afterward, and then another Iran war powers vote, where for the first time Rand Paul of Kentucky voted present. For the past several votes, they've had many Iran war powers resolution votes in the Senate. Rand Paul has even been an original co-sponsor on one of them, has always voted yes, but yesterday he voted present, and Senator Bill Cassidy switched his vote to no. Senator Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine kept their yes votes. And so for the past in the most recent few votes, they have been in support of the War Powers Resolution. Now, Democratic Senator John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, as you all, he's a focus of this program, I'm sure. He has voted no consistently every time.
And how has Pennsylvania's other senator voted on these?
Well, Senator McCormick was not there earlier this week because he was with President Trump in Pennsylvania at I believe it was a Mack truck manufacturing facility for a stop about the economy. So he did not vote the other day, but he has voted no consistently.
Now, last week you wrote about the peace negotiations that Vice President J.D. Vance is involved in. Where do those stand right now?
Well, the U.S. continues to be in talks. They're on a 60-day timeline for this. So I haven't counted how many days in we are, but all of this really hinges on whether they can strike an agreement on traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, and also if Israel will halt any bombing campaigns in southern Lebanon. I saw this morning that there were some strikes, and I believe 3 people were reported killed in southern Lebanon. So that puts it all on shaky ground. And this traffic through the Strait of Hormuz is starting to flow very slowly, but it's nothing compared to what it was prior to the war, which was roughly 140 ships per day in and out. 1/5 of the world's petroleum products and liquid natural gas going in and out.
Now, Tom, you've wrote recently about Congressman Chris DeLuzio. He's been visiting some immigration detention centers, and one resident who's from his district was recently released. What has his experience been?
Right, yeah. Chris DeLuzio and Summer Lee, both of the Pittsburgh area, went out to the Moshannon Valley Processing Center. I guess it was the end of May, and it was an unannounced tour. They had hoped, or at least DeLuzio hoped, to speak with this Springdale resident, Randy Cordova Flores, at the time. And since he visited, he didn't say that his visit had a direct impact by any means, but that Flores has been released, and we asked him if he thought that maybe the Trump administration's immigration enforcement had changed at all. He didn't necessarily think it had, but maybe some of these high-profile cases where where lawmakers in the community are coming together, he thought that the pressure maybe influenced a little bit. I believe there was some legal wrangling on behalf of that family to get him out in the meantime while his case is pending. But yeah, DeLuzio was in Harrisburg for this press luncheon earlier in the week, and he gave a kind of similar speech about affordability that I'd heard him share in the past. He was in Harrisburg last year with Bernie Sanders on their Fight the Oligarchy tour, and a lot about talking about the future of the Democratic Party, or about the left side of Congress, what it should look like. That's sort of what he got into while he was around the area.
Kate, Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice David Wecht a few weeks ago made the decision and an announcement that he was going to be leaving the Democratic Party. What were his reasons, and what impact has this had?
Yeah, his biggest reason, he said, was the acquiescence to anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. Those are his words. He didn't name any names specifically, but he pointed to the acceptance of candidates who had, I believe, Nazi insignia, or had said anti-Semitic rhetoric. I think some of the implication was that maybe he was pointing to Graham Plattner, who was the Democratic primary winner for the Maine Senate seat. And Plattner previously had a Nazi tattoo, or he still does, but it's covered now. And in terms of impact on his role, Wecht would say that there shouldn't be any, right? Judges are nonpartisan, though they do run in partisan elections. But as far as day-to-day goes, his job is still to listen to cases, assess the constitutionality of arguments. There were a few legal ethics experts I spoke to that maybe raised questions about how that might impact his ability to listen to cases presented by the Democratic or Republican Party in terms of appearance of bias, but the process through which that would be litigated, I guess, or dealt with, there's a process through which that is dealt with within the state, right? Like petitioners can ask for judges to recuse themselves depending on certain specific reasons. But as of yet, to my knowledge, that's not happened. And there hasn't been too much of an impact.
Ashley, we only have a few minutes left, but I wanted to touch on the issue of religious freedom. Actor Rainn Wilson from The Office was in Washington participating in an effort to advocate for religious freedom. What was he trying to do? What was his message?
I hardly recognized him at first. So yes, he was there on behalf of the Baha'i religious organization. He was with bipartisan members of Congress. And basically, so what's happening with the 250th anniversary coming up, there are many causes, activism, latching on to this large, like very important milestone in American history to say, these are the ideals, this is what America means. And so what he was doing was advocating for freedom of conscience. So whether, Christian, secular, advocating for religious freedom across the board or the freedom to not have a religion. It is in contrast to what I saw last night on the National Mall, which was very much a focus on Christianity. But yeah, Rainn Wilson was there advocating for this with Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania, Democrat, and a Republican of Florida.
Well, that's the end of our show. Our guests have been Ashley Murray, senior reporter at States Newsroom, Kate Huangpu, from government reporter at Spotlight PA, and Tom Riese, state capitol reporter at WESA in Pittsburgh. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I'm Phil Beckman, and thank you for watching.
Full episodes of politics and policy content like the program you just listened to are available to stream with the PCN Select app. Discover other shows like the Capitol Preview, On the Issues, candidate interviews, and more. To learn more about PCN's mission and to support PCN with a donation, visit PCNTV.com. This link and others can be found in our show notes. We appreciate your support.